Good evening and welcome to Chat UTD. So no sooner had my video this morning uploaded than I then found out that Ten Hag had been sacked. The right decision, absolutely. To make, impressed that the club didn't wait around this week. They've been prompt. They've acted on it. I didn't think they would, as I said in my video this morning, so I'm happy that they have. Ineos made a big mistake in the summer, not sacking Ten Hag after the season, and I think the knock-on effect of that has been hugely damaging. We've wasted a start to a season. We've brought more players in for that manager. We're now in a situation where the next decision they have to get it absolutely right to make sure that knock-on effect doesn't continue. And the only way for me that they correct the mistake they made in the summer is by making an outstanding appointment next. Just sacking him, which is the right thing to do, isn't enough. No manager should be able to survive the last 15 months worth of statistics that Ten Hag has got. It's been absolutely shocking. As I said in my video this morning, he wouldn't survive at Villa, Brighton or Newcastle, let alone Manchester United. The nuts and bolts of it are that we lose too many games under him, we don't score enough goals, we concede too many goals. But if you look beyond that, there's a lack of tactical adaptability. He doesn't seem to know how to respond when an opposition manager makes tactical switches or makes substitutions. He's unable to fix problems that are very obvious problems that happen game after game after game after game. He can't produce a team that's consistent even over 90 minutes. The team is incapable under Ten Hag of putting together a consistent 90-minute performance, let alone consistency over game after game after game after game. I don't think there's a very clear, distinct way of playing, and I don't think he's left a positive Ten Hag-like imprint on the team. His signings, which we're led to believe he's had quite a big say in, haven't been great. The overview of his tenure for me, I'll do a proper video on it at some point, but just briefly. His first season was obviously pretty impressive. He didn't imprint his style of play that season. It was the team doing the basics that they didn't do very well under Ollie. They did the basics better under Ten Hag. Rashford hit a hot streak. And I think there's something that's underplayed and underestimated that happened in that first season. During the World Cup in November, the Glazers gave us hope that maybe they might sell the club, and the whole club breathed a collective sigh of relief. And I think it was like we had been released from this prison of the Glazers. Even the idea of it meant that perhaps we were going to be released from this prison of the Glazers. And I don't think you can underestimate the impact that had, because when we came back from the World Cup, for 3 months the consistency was superb, and it wasn't before the World Cup. And it faded as the season went on, perhaps after the League Cup win. But we accrued so many points in that 3-month period and won the League Cup, and then basically because we catapulted ourselves so high up the table, we ended up not having to be great in those last few months and just managing to hang on and get third, won a cup, reached a cup final. That's a good solid season. Then the test is, can you push on? Can you progress? And last season, far from progressing, he regressed, and the team regressed massively and very, very worryingly. As I said, he should have gone at the end of last season. He didn't. He's had a chance, he's had a stay of execution, and it's just got worse. So that's a brief overview of his tenure. Definitely the right time to move on. Inevitably, when a Man United manager gets sacked, we get this talk of these players getting managers sacked. Another manager's been sacked because of these players. This needs to be challenged. A distinction needs to be made. These players are not good enough. But the large majority of these players have not got manager after manager sacked. Goldbridge in his reaction video today spoke about the players picking their game up when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took over from Mourinho, and subsequently we all got carried away and Ole got the job, and he said he didn't want the same thing to happen with Ruud because these players did it with Ole and they could do it with Ruud. Who's he talking about? The only players in this squad that were there then are Rashford, who's the main one, Dalot, who at the time was a bit of a bit part player under Mourinho, and then when Ole came in, and Lindelof. Luke Shaw's pretty much retired. I'm not including Luke Shaw. And Lindelof isn't a great player, but he's not a downer of tools. Dalot is not a downer of tools. Rashford, But this is not a collection of players that has got a number of managers sacked. The vast majority of this team has been recruited by Ten Hag. So, I say again, the distinction is, these players aren't good enough, but there's hardly any of these players now who've seen more than one or two managers. And they certainly don't get a manager sacked and then bounce. With Rangnick, there was no bounce. And there's a few of them who were in the team then, but as I say, the vast majority of the starting 11 now are Ten Hag players. So I think we need to make that distinction. I reiterate, they're not good enough. So what next? I'll tell you what I don't want first, and then I'll tell you what I do want. What I don't want is this nonsense about a small pool of managers being available. I don't want us to go for some chump who just happens to be available. Your market is going to be really poor if you do that. Terzic, Xavi, Van Nistelrooy obviously is an interim. They're not going to move us. That's not going to move Man United forward, and they're lazy appointments. They're short-term appointments. There's no best in class in that. What I want us to do now is go and get someone from a club. Go and pick the person that you believe is the best person, that ticks all your boxes if you're Ineos. Go and get your guy, because Ten Hag wasn't your guy. You've had 9 months now. You've had 9 months to assess. You've had 9 months to create a dossier, to create a portfolio, to have information, to have intel on managers. You've got some pretty slick operators in the club. What I want us to do is do what we did with Barada and Ashworth. Go to a rival club if necessary and poach their talent. In this case, it's the manager. The structure of a team now is so dependent on your chief executive, your director of football, and your manager. We've got 2 of them in place. The chief executive and the director of football, both very, very slick appointments, as I mentioned. The next bit, the missing piece of the jigsaw, is the manager. Go and wow us, Ineos. Go and do something that I'm not expecting you to do. Go and get someone. I don't know who that is. When Mourinho got sacked, I 100% wanted Mauricio Pochettino. There was no one else I wanted. It was him. I'm not saying I was right, but I had a very strong inclination that I wanted him to be the next manager. There isn't anyone that I can see out there now that I would fully throw my hat behind. But that's not for me to know. As I said in previous videos, Ineos have got people they're paying handsomely to gather this information, so they need to be doing that, and they need to make a permanent appointment. It's October. It's early enough for us to salvage our season. And the wording of the statement makes me think potentially that could happen. The initial statement said that Van Nistelrooy would be interim manager while they appoint a permanent successor, which is ambiguous to some degree. But I'm sure I heard something later in the afternoon suggesting that Van Nistelrooy was going to be a short-term interim and that a permanent successor would be in place quite soon. That's what we need to do. But I don't know who it is, but I know the profile that we need. And I mentioned it in my video this morning. We need a standard bearer. We need somebody who can come into that dressing room, demand respect straight away, put down firm rules, boundaries, expectations, standards, as I mentioned before. Have a style of play, properly invest in young players, and tick boxes that Ineos want to be ticked. Don't just go out and get a Terzic or a Xavi because they're free. This team doesn't suit the way Xavi would want to play, the personnel. That's what else you've got to do. You've got to get someone who can make this team click. This team is a Ten Hag team. Not in terms of the way it plays, because he wasn't able to do that, as I mentioned before, but in terms of personnel, these are players he's handpicked in quite a lot of instances anyway. So I don't know who it is, but I kind of know the attributes he's going to need to have and the credentials he's going to need to have. This is the earliest Man United have ever sacked a manager. Ron Atkinson was sacked in November. We know who replaced him. That's what we need to do. I often think to myself, if we'd have had a full takeover and within reason had a limitless pot of money, what would we be expecting to happen in this situation? Would we go and get an interim? Would we get someone just because they're not employed? No way. We'd go and get the best person that we believe can do the best job for our club. And if it's the middle of the season, you have to pay money. It's the middle of the season, you have to pay money. If it's difficult because it is the middle of the season, then we're Man United. We should be able to sell ourselves enough to a manager to say, this is our vision, these are our values, these are our other appointments we've made on an infrastructure level. You come in, you could transform this football club. Whoever comes in and gets this right, because at some point someone will, you'll be immortal in the eyes of the Manchester United fans. And that's not even thinking about winning titles. That's just getting us to play a decent brand of football and finishing in a relatively high position year in, year out. So that's doable. And that's what we need to do. And that's what a full owner of a football club who had a few quid would do. So go and surprise me, Ineos. Go and wow me. Go and get somebody that we can get behind. Because one of the big problems over the last few years for United has been they've sacked a manager, which needed to happen. And then we brought someone in that I've been completely underwhelmed with. Go and do something that makes us go, wow, these are serious. These do have the ambition that they say they have. Because it's October and the season is more than salvageable. This next appointment could transform the view of Ineos amongst the fan base. Because right now, well, I'll just speak for myself, I don't have a lot of faith in them at all. I think they've made a pretty poor start to life at Man United. This is a biggie. And if it's a big wet fart like Xavi, not that he's a wet fart, the decision would be a wet fart. You're just like, yeah, it's more Glazer stuff, innit? On the cheap, not wanting to get someone out of a club. Suck it and see type appointment. We don't need suck it and see. We need something that you fully believe in. So that's what I hope happens. Will it? We'll see. It's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, I'm never going to celebrate someone losing their job, but I think it is good news for United. We needed clarity. This decision needed to be made, and for me personally, I've been doing this channel since July 2023, so 15 months is that. I've never done a match reaction or a match preview for anyone else other than Erik ten Hag's Manchester United. So on Wednesday it will be Ruud van Nistelrooy's Man United. I hope in about a week or so I'm talking about whoever this person's going to be. I appreciate I haven't got the answers, but whoever that person is, I want to be talking about their Manchester United. They've got then the whole of the rest of the season to assess this team, to see if they can get a tune out of them, to have ups and downs, to know that it's more than just a bounce if we get some sustainable results, to probably hit a few patches that are not what we would want and try and come through them. and then we've got a really informed view going into next summer. As I said before, it's always promises of tomorrow. I know that, and this is more promises of tomorrow, but it is where we are. So if we can appoint a proper manager now, not just someone who's free, then Ineos can hopefully start to make up for that mistake that they made by not sacking Ten Hag in the summer when they were ill prepared and made a poor judgment in my view. There we go. Glazers out.